Today we're going to talk about the number one belief that keeps entrepreneurs stuck. You are very likely thinking it in some way, shape, or form, possibly without even realizing it. And so today there might be a little bit of tough love, but it's because I want to help you succeed. And I don't know about you, but I will take that any day of the week over rah-rah cheerleading that doesn't really help me with what I need. If you're new here, hi, I'm Luisa Zhou. I run a 7-figure coaching and course business. I've been doing this business alone for the last 7 to 8 years. I'm also an investor, a business coach, and own some other businesses. So with that, everything I share on this channel is experience-based. It's very much grounded in what I've actually gone through, not just some nice theory. And it's all about helping you build your own business so that you can grow your own freedom, impact, and control. With that, let's go into the number one belief that I want to share with you today and how to reframe it, which is just as important. That number one belief that I want to share with you is I see so many entrepreneurs asking questions, thinking things that are basically telling me they are trying to make things be easy. They are looking for that easy button. And that sets you up to fail like, frankly, very little else. And so what I'm going to share with you today is, first of all, stop thinking about wanting it to be easy if you're trying to build and grow your own business. And then I'm going to share with you how to reframe it and some of my top tips for doing that. Now, let me be clear. This does not mean that you can't look for ways to be more efficient with your business, but the truth is building a business is hard. You're building an asset that is going to replace your income, probably exceed it, provide for you and your loved ones, give you more control, freedom, impact than probably anything else that you could do. Put that into perspective. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Otherwise, everyone would have it already. You've probably already heard that. So now let's talk about how to actually reframe this in a tangible way versus just, be prepared for it to be hard and, let's have that be motivational. That's not what we're here to do today. So the first thing I want you to do is everything you go into doing, expect it to be hard. Now, there's a difference between logically knowing, yeah, I've heard before, building a business is hard. There's so much to it, et cetera, and actually expecting it to be hard. The difference is this. Every time I plan something in my business, a strategy, a goal, a campaign, I plan for the best case scenario, but I also prepare for the worst case scenario. So I literally sit down and think through, what are the possible obstacles that could come up? Every single one. If it comes up, how am I going to prepare for it? What are the rejections that could come up? If so, when I have those and when I'm feeling down, how am I going to handle it in that moment? Because I'd rather be prepared for it versus having to figure it out in that moment, right? So how long could it potentially take versus how long I think it will take? How much more could it cost me versus what I think it will cost me? The whole spectrum. Again, there's a very big difference between kind of logically knowing, yeah, everyone says building a business is hard, and being prepared and expecting it, which helps you go into it with a much more resilient and frankly realistic and practical frame of mind and set you up for success. So a very simple example is when you're starting out, let's say you're selling coaching or some sort of service and you are doing sales calls, and every sales call is like a miracle, right? Like, oh my gosh, how did this person find me? So you get on the call, and what are all the things that could go wrong? It could be the wrong person, like not an ideal client. It could be someone who is not a good fit for you. It could be someone who is not ready or willing to invest, someone who's rude, who's looking for free information, someone who says something unexpected, basically rejects you, right? What are all the things that could go wrong? How long could it take you to get your next sales call? What are all the things that you could miss out on there? And then what are you going to do if someone gets on a sales call and doesn't buy from you? Those are all the things to think through where you expect it to be hard. Now, this is key. I'm not saying that it's always going to be hard. If you're doing it right, you're building a business, you're following all the things that I talk about in terms of marketing, sales, best practices, chances are you're going to have it more easily than the worst case scenario. However, it's always better to plan for the worst case scenario and have the outcome be way better than to have it the other way around. So that's what I mean when I say expect it to be hard. That's tip number one. Tip number two is to take it a step further and embrace it. There was a time in my business, and I think we probably all go through this as entrepreneurs, when I thought that I had it harder than any other entrepreneur, right? It took me longer to get things done. I learned things more slowly. My personality wasn't as charismatic. everything you can think of, I have thought. And so whenever something happened where it was hard, I had an obstacle, I had a failure, I would essentially ask that question, why is it so hard for me? Maybe it means I'm not cut out for this and I can't do this. And then I would go into my whole kind of wallowing in self-pity cycle. So what I learned to do a few years in, and took me some trial and error to figure this out, but it really made a massive difference in my resilience and my ability to grow the business much faster, is I learned to embrace it. And by embracing it, I mean I trained myself to have a different automatic response whenever something quote unquote bad happened. Instead of going into the cycle that I just shared, I would basically sit down and ask myself, okay, what did I learn from this? Why was this more helpful than a success would have been in terms of what I learned? How is this going to set me up so much for the future, potentially lead to faster and bigger successes because of the things I learned than if I had had it easy and succeeded and wouldn't have learned these things? I literally spent 10, 15 minutes mapping that out. And the first quite a few times I had to do this, I really had to manually sit down and map it out. Then as time went on and it became a habit, it became really gradual. So nowadays, whenever something like that happens, I immediately go to that. And like I said, this has made the biggest difference. And I'm going to give you a really big example because I think it can be easy to be like, oh yeah, Luisa, you're saying this, but from the surface, it looks like you've had things so easy. So something that I've shared before, but if you're new here, you might not know, is that to build up one of the main sales systems in my business, which sells one of my flagship programs, Employee to Entrepreneur, which is a $2,000 self-study course. It's massively robust. It's frankly amazing and the best of its kind ever. Not just said by me, but by pretty much everyone who's gone through it. I wanted to sell it as a self-study course. And that's because I believe people should be able to access it when they were ready. I believe the value was absolutely there. And frankly, it was a steal at that value. And I wasn't going to undervalue myself or the program either. And I didn't want to make it into a big mass coaching program because sometimes you just need a course to get started. Maybe you aren't ready for coaching, a whole bunch of reasons. It just felt like the right fit to me, essentially. However, when I first started out, and this was, many, many years ago, so like many generations in online internet terms, and at the time, no one else was doing it. No one else was selling a $2,000 self-study course. No one else was selling it on an automated funnel. And everyone told me that it couldn't be done. And I said, you know what, forget this. I believe in this. I believe this is the way that is going to best help people and share everything that I want to share here. And I'm going to figure it out. And the thing is, it took me 2.5 years to figure out how to do it. I'm talking about creating the funnel, the systems, the marketing, explaining to people the value, finding the best traffic sources and scaling it, and really testing and tweaking and optimizing everything. Again, because it's a lot more common now, and I'm definitely going to take some credit for that. But at the time, no one else was doing it. And over the 2.5 years, I can't even tell you how many webinars, how many email sequences, how many sales pages. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars running paid advertising campaigns to bring in traffic and to test and learn and to optimize. Now, of course, that wasn't the only thing I was doing in my business, because if that was, I would have been out a lot of money with no other revenue sources. So I was doing other things that I knew were successful to run my business and have the revenue to be able to invest in that. But part of it is because I went into it with the mentality of expecting it to be hard because no one else had done it before. And so it took me 2.5 years of, even when I was on vacation, I would be like, oh my God, I have this idea for this funnel. Let me go ahead and tweak it. The whole day would be gone. I missed out on my vacation, but at least I got this. It was pretty miserable. I'm not saying I recommend that to anybody, but I wanted to share with you what that looked like. That being said, one of the reasons I was able to get through it and not give up is because not only did I really believe in it, but every time I had a failure, I asked myself those exact questions. I told myself, every single thing I'm learning about webinars, it's making me a really good marketer. These days, I would say my marketing, my copywriting, my sales skills are frankly top of the top. That's why my clients who come to me wanting to build their own funnels nowadays scale to multiple 6, 7, multiple 7 figures. And that's not something, and in various industries. That's not something that most people have the skill or the experience to help people with. So back then I knew this was going to help me with that, not to mention growing my own businesses. I also knew that it was going to be building my audience with all the paid advertising that I was running, even if they weren't buying from me right away. You know what? I was going to build those relationships with those people and create this amazing audience and community. And I was going to learn so much about how to run a funnel, about how to do marketing, copywriting, sales, all of those things. And every single time I had a failure, and I had so many, I had to sit down and do that, right? And that is how I was able to ultimately succeed. That funnel alone is a 7-figure funnel for me these days. And so, right, it paid off during those 2.5 years. It was not fast. It did not feel like it could potentially pay off. I had no other proof. And so doing this made a massive difference to that. And I wanted to share that because that's not a trivial example. It's not like I struggled with something for a day or a week. I asked myself these questions and everything turned around. I'm not saying it needs to be that long or that hard for you, but I wanted to share like a very real, actual example, you know? Okay, so that's thing number 2. Number 3 that I want to share is very key. This is a very key principle, and that is to not be action oriented, which is what a lot of people teach, but instead to be results oriented in everything that you do in your business. And this is part of the embracing hard, because it can be very easy to say, okay, I took this course or I watched this video and it told me to go and do this thing. Like, for example, I might say, okay, go and reach out to 5 people who have an audience similar to your ideal clients, and share with them how you could do an interview with them or a guest post or a joint video together where you share what you know with their audience, and in return offer to help them even further with your service or your coaching package if they want that help. Right? So it's one thing to say, okay, I went out there, I reached out to 5 people, I sent a really simple mass kind of scripted template, and I didn't get any responses, so this doesn't work for me. It's a very different other thing to say, okay, I'm going to send 5 outreach emails. I'm going to aim to get 1 person to say yes, and I'm going to do such a great job that person asks me back, and or I get a client from doing that. So that means I'm going to have to be a lot more careful in how I script my outreach, how I share the content that I'm going to share, how I actually deliver the content, who I reach out to, and the entire process. That is the difference. I see this so often. This is why so many newer entrepreneurs fall into like shiny objects. I mean, not even newer entrepreneurs. I see this at every level, 6, multiple 6, 7, multiple 7, honestly, right? Like, oh my gosh, what I'm doing isn't going to get me to the next level. So-and-so is doing this. Let me try this. Everyone suffers from this at some point. And so there's that piece. And then also basically being able to avoid that because you are thinking, okay, I know this strategy works. Let me figure out how to use it to get a result because I'm committed to it, versus I'm just going to do it, check it off, and then it's not going to work and I'll move on to the next thing. That doesn't really help anybody. And so really big difference between, like I said, being results oriented versus just action oriented. One gets you actual results. The other is just like, I feel good. I did some stuff. It's not working, let me move on, right? Completely different mentality and way of looking for the easy way out versus expecting it to be hard and frankly getting way better results. So there's that. The 4th thing that I want to wrap up this video with is essentially, now that we've covered some of the key principles, asking yourself, where might I be thinking about this right now? You might be thinking, you know what? I'm a hard worker. I've been embracing the hard work philosophy. I'm good here. I will tell you, I have personally coached over 1,000 entrepreneurs in my coaching programs and my group programs, not to mention helped a lot more people through my courses. And every single person I've ever spoken with has some area where they could use improvement with this. And so if you take down a second and think, well, you know what? Is there somewhere where I'm falling prey to shiny object syndrome, where I'm looking for a magic bullet right now? Even if I wasn't really thinking about it that way, oh yeah, I actually am. Instead of, you know what? I can sit down, I can do the work, I can do this a little bit better. Yes, I can hire a course or a coach or a consultant to help me improve on this, but I know it's going to take work. Very big difference, right? Of course, always get the support you need that will make things faster. But there's a very big difference between, oh my God, I'm going to buy this course and it's going to be the magic thing, versus I'm going to buy this course, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to do what it takes to figure out how to use it in the best way for me to get the results. Really, really big difference. Also think about, is there somewhere where you have maybe set unrealistic expectations because you're in that I'm looking for it to be easy mentality. So I will tell you, when I was first starting out, I built this, my first online business to 6 figures in 4 months before I left my job. Now, I always caveat, and I always do this, that it wasn't my first business. It wasn't even my second or my third. I worked my butt off nonstop. Then I grew this business to over $1 million in its first year. And again, I worked all the time. Yet people, and this is human nature, so no judgment there. I do the same thing myself. People would basically miss the fact that I had started my first business like over 10 years ago, that I had worked nonstop, that I put all my money back into my business, that I had done so many things to be able to get to that point, right? And so they would come to me and say, hey, I want your help growing my business to 6 figures or 7 figures or whatever number in the same amount of time that you did. And I never say never. I believe anything is possible, right? If you're willing to put in the work. But I would say, okay, let's see where you are right now. If you've never done a business before, if you have zero knowledge of what it is you offer, your audience, copywriting, marketing, sales, anything, to go from 0 to 6 figures in 4 months, it's possible. I've helped clients get very close to it, frankly, like 6 figures in 5 months, right? Like right under 6 figures in a few months. But those were, frankly, more exceptions than the norm. They came in, they were committed, they did everything, they worked nonstop, they applied all the philosophies that we've just gone through, right? And sometimes people need a little bit more time before they're ready to do all of that. And so with that, maybe you have some unrealistic expectations yourself. What does it matter if it takes a little bit longer than what you're thinking or what so-and-so did it, right? Use that to inspire you versus to measure against. Very big difference as well. And then the final piece is, where are you thinking questions and looking for answers that are an indicator of you looking for the easy way or like a magic bullet? And a common example is, a question I get a lot is when people ask, how did you find the time to work on your business? Now, here's the thing. I'm all for learning how other people have done it so that you can learn and use their tips for yourself. Absolutely, always be doing that. That being said, there's a difference between the mentality of asking to be able to learn that versus like they maybe know something that's magical and easy and made it easy for them that's going to make it easy for me. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about, right? And so with that, when people ask me how can I find the time, yes, I share my tips, and they're good, yeah, but it's not like I have some magic time turner or time machine or figured out a way to get more time than anybody else. And so what I always say whenever I share my tips really to anything is, yes, there's a better way to do it. Yes, having the experience helps, absolutely. But at the end of the day, honestly, when I first started, all I did was I took an extra 30 minutes from before I went to sleep, cut down my sleep by 30 minutes because I couldn't do more than that. I need my sleep. And I got started. Even if I was just sitting there working on my website and it was really slow, I built that habit. Things got faster. I got more productive and efficient with my time, and my business grew. It made it easier to work on, and it created that snowball effect. Essentially, right? Who wants to hear that though? And so that anywhere you might be thinking that and having those questions, I really want you to take a second and note that. As soon as you do, you can reframe it like that because of everything we talked over. It doesn't have to be really complicated to do this. It just has to take awareness of you thinking that, realizing there is another reframe, and then reframe it in all the ways that we talked about. So that is going to make such a massive difference in your business. And if you have found that helpful, what I have for you is another really great video on 4 thoughts that successful entrepreneurs never think, that are really common, that we are taught to think. But if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you want to avoid at all costs. I'm going to share that video with you right here. So if you want to, go ahead and check it out, and I will see you in that video.